Okay, so now when I like start running a spline, a backbone up this guy here, you may, looking at other tutorials and stuff like that, see how the head's kind of its own separate thing. With this guy, it really doesn't matter. It's if you create a joint here, I can create a head joint because I don't. His head is one big thing. You know, you may see like them creating separate bones in the head for the head, some of the muscles and stuff like that. But this guy's got one movement for his head, so I really see no point in creating a big head system. I mean, he has one bone that runs up his head, and that's the head controller basically. So I make that part of the spinal cord. The spinal cord basically just consists of a joint for every single part of the body, which, you know, if you want to do it exactly like a human, then you'd have to do it exactly anatomically correct. But with this guy right here, I don't really have a lot of movement. I just kind of him able to kind of bend and then create controllers for these actually joints here. So what I'll do is I'll create, you know, 3 joints up the back and then a head joint. Pretty simple. Bring the guy back over here, make sure I'm still recording. You want to do this in your side view. Do this in your side view. Now let's go to skeleton, create joints. I already have it set to how I like it. You could create this straight up the spine, but I'm just going to kind of angle it to the back here, just kind of because I want to. So I'm going to start right here and create my first joint, the second, third. Now this is my neck joint right here. I'm going to go to the very top and we'll finish out my head bone right there. So enter. I'm going to make sure these are lined up where I want them at. I need to move this one up a little bit. I want the head to pivot right there. That one's good. And this one right here, there's not going to be no controller for this one because this is basically going to parent to the actual root controller. So I won't need to be able to really make a controller. So really where this placement is going to be fine. So everything's lined up where I want it to. I just need to orient these joints and name them. So this is going to be my spline. Probably got to change some of them. This is null. This will never be of any use to anyone, so I'm going to call them null. This is going to actually be my head joint. I'm going to change this to head joint. This will be my spline, or spline 1. Spline 2. And spline 3. I didn't need to do that since I have joint 1, joint 2, joint 3, but I'll be able to know exactly what I'm selecting whenever I'm selecting the paint tool for painting weights and stuff. So now I need to create controllers, and this is going to run just like in the intro to rigging how the tail controller runs straight down, and they will all parent together, then everything will parent to the root. So let's create some controllers. This is going to be my big one here. I'm going to create another one. This will be my third one. This will kind of be like an underarm. And I'm going to create another one for my head. And I'm going to put my head up here. Now I'm going to kind of change the style of these things here, just so I want it to look good. So I'm going to scale this down. I am going to take these vertexes here. Get it up like that. this right here is the one that kind of needs to be kind of smaller, just to offset it from the root joint. And this right here needs to actually go up higher. Like that. Now the pivot point of these is important. One of these things to pivot right there on the joints. You could just kind of leave it as is, and probably then it would be weird whenever you're going to moving these things. It wouldn't exactly be moving, but this way you can kind of tell exactly where the pivot points are going to move. So you can just press D and transform, move the pivot point over here on the joint. I'm going to move the joint down some, just a little bit. This one does the same. Now I'm pressing D and just moving the pivot point. Now I can check it in the front just to make sure that they're on. You could snap to the middle of the point. I'm just not doing that right now. It's close enough. Same way with that one. This is the one that you got to kind of move and kind of get it exactly. I want this neck to move exactly where the neck joint is. So I'm going to take this thing and press D and move the pivot point down right there on the joint. Oops, not there. Move it over some. I'm moving the whole controller now. There we go. Alright, so now we have a controller for each joint here. This one's going to control this one. This one will control this one. And I don't need to control this one because this is basically my root controller. This will make sense here in a minute. So now that we've got their controllers built, need to make sure delete the history on them. So I'm going to select all of them. Actually, I want to move this a little bit because whenever I put my arms down, you may not be able to see it. So cool. So let's delete the history on these things. Then delete by type history. Let's freeze the transformation so the values are set to 0. So now they'll pop back to 0 if I need to get back to default. Now let's well, I'll name these whenever I select them up. So let's parent constraint. We're going to be parent constraining these to the joints. Box open, just make sure we maintain offset, apply. Select this controller. This one's going to go to my third one here. And this one will be this controller. So now what I want to do is parent these things down the chain so they all follow. In other words, this is just going to be basically parented to this one by pressing P. This one will be parented to this one by pressing P. Let's check these things. That one works. That one works. And my head controller works. Great. And they also work with the rotation too. Alright, so let me make sure these are named properly. So this is my head controller. My controller spline 2. This is my controller for spline 3 or the shoulder, however you want to name it. So how do we get this to kind of start following it? Well, that's pretty simple. Select this selection, select this root chain, and just press P. Now, see what it's done? It's created like a tiny little long bone in there, which is kind of cool, but that one never moves. So what I need to do basically is I need to parent those controllers up top there to this root controller the same way. So this is parented to this now by pressing P. So let's see if this thing works. Oh yeah, now we've got like a bendable spine that I can kind of give it a little bit of movement a couple different ways, and then if I wanted to turn the head, I'll just select the head and turn the head anyway. And I don't have the skin binded yet. I'll do that next time. But that is how you do it, ladies and gentlemen. Now the next block, what I'm gonna do is create the arm, then create some finger bones, and then mirror that to the other side. And then when I have everything rigged up, I'll do a forward kinematics setup for that, but I'll do some attributes on the fingers to show how you can adjust the values. And we'll just kind of create like a world controller for everything and kind of group everything together. But for that, if you get that far, you're doing good. And we're moving further on down the line. Just make sure you check everything, everything's labeled correctly and everything's looking good. All this stuff is going to get grouped together, so don't let it scare you. Just the most important thing is to have these things labeled, especially when it comes to painting vertexes and stuff like that. So, okay, until next time, thanks a lot.